So I'm Lee Larsen, and I was the general manager of KOA Radio at the time that the Colorado Rockies were created. We have been working for quite a while with the idea that baseball might come to Denver. Even prior to my arrival, I came to town in 1983, and prior to that, Jeff Kingery and Bob Martin, who were two of our sports casters, had been working on ideas on what would KOA's role be if Major League Baseball came to Denver. So they had built quite a file of ideas, and they had been active talking to other people in the community who had an interest in baseball. They had worked a lot with the Denver Bears and John DeCue, so they had a working knowledge of baseball. I received a call from Governor Romer one day once it had been announced by Major League Baseball that they were going to expand by a couple of markets. So Governor Romer called and on behalf of the state and county and all of the politicians that were trying to work to bring together a possible bid for the team, and he asked if I would meet with a representative from this ownership group that they were talking to out of the Midwest, Mickey Monis and John Antonucci. So anyway, the governor called and asked if I would meet with them, and I agreed to do that. And I met with Steve Earhart. Steve Earhart was one of the partners in that group as well. And so Steve came to see me and kind of laid out the plan that ownership group had. At the time, Major League Baseball had wanted a local ownership group, and they'd wanted a ownership group that was comprised of numerous entities. So the Monis Antonucci group were not local, and they were not a diverse multi-entity. So they were trying to build a following or support group of people in Denver, the Denver business community, and they wanted to know about KOA's interests. So we were very interested, and that's what I told Steve, and we met with them over a period of a number of weeks, and I talked to the people at our company, and then we agreed to become a limited partner along with a number of other Denver businesses. And that began our great adventure of being the broadcast partner, and there was no guarantee when we made our arrangement with them to be one of the minority investors. It was made clear on both sides that there was no agreement that we would necessarily be the radio home of the Rockies, that would be a separate discussion, a separate negotiation. And it was, and it was a difficult negotiation, and there were a lot of interested parties in Denver, but in the end we were able to prevail and became the first home of the Colorado Rockies. And of course, all these years later, KOA is still the home of the Rockies. I think one of the big advantages that KOA has always had is its enormous signal. It's the strongest station in the region. It covers parts of 30 states. It reaches up into Canada. So it's a perfect venue for the Rockies games, since the Rockies fans are spread out over such a wide area. And we don't have other big cities outside of Denver, Colorado Springs. You've got to go a long ways till you find the next big city. So you need a lot of coverage, and that worked very well for us. KOA was a minority owner of the team until just recently, when they negotiated a new contract with the team, and as part of that they gave back to the team their minority ownership stake.
So what percentage did KOA own at the beginning?
We put up $1 million, which at the time was a 1% stake in the team. because I think it was a $95 million purchase price plus the startup costs and so forth. So our $1 million gave us a 1% ownership.
And then the contract for the broadcasting was totally separate from that?
Yeah, that was a totally separate, the contract with the team to broadcast the games was totally separate.
So did you get involved in the presentations to Major League Baseball or any of the meetings that they had with Major League Baseball?
No, I did not. What KOA's role was more communicating with the public and telling the fans what was happening and encouraging the fans to come out when we wanted to demonstrate the fan interest in Denver. KOA was very involved in that, but I was not involved in any of the negotiations with Major League Baseball.
So Lee, if I remember correctly, you had several talk show hosts throughout the day, and several of them specialized in sports. Do you remember how many programs there were at that prior to the election?
I believe at the time KOA would have had a sports show in the afternoon, and that the main topic of that show would have been sports, and so they talked a lot about baseball. The rest of the radio station was news and more traditional talk, but the idea of Major League Baseball coming to Denver was a hot topic. It wasn't just a topic among sports fans or on sports radio shows. It was on every show because it was the type of thing that it was going to be a cultural enhancement to the community, a big asset to Denver, an economic driver. So I think there was a tremendous amount of interest from diehard sports fans as well as just the general public. So talk hosts across all of our stations and across all of the day parts, it was a topic of conversation of how far should Denver go to try to get a team, who should the ownership group be, all of those sort of things were great topics for a long time.
So I remember several talk show hosts, and I don't remember if they were specifically with KOA, but I remember Theory Smith. Was Theory Smith part of the KOA lineup?
No, Theory was on one of the other all sports type stations.
And Jim Turner was?
Same. Jim Turner was on KNUS.
And
so.
Peter Boyle?
Peter would have been on KNUS as well, I think, at that time.
So it seems to me that I was on someone's show quite frequently, and because I think, you know, as you stated before, everybody just, baseball was on their mind, and they just loved talking about baseball, and, you know, the should we not, will we not, kind of a scenario. And it seems like I had heard from one of those hosts that you had requested that, you know, we need to start broadening our base of what we're going to talk about besides baseball. Mm-hmm. Do you remember anything like that?
No, I don't remember that exactly. And you probably were on Mike Rosen's show. Mike Rosen was the principal talk host on KOA, and he followed a lot of the local issues in Denver and in the state of Colorado, and I think he was a very big proponent of Denver reaching out and trying to bring Major League Baseball to Denver. So his show covered that topic a lot.
So because it was such clogged the airways for so long before the election, were you ever concerned that it would violate any campaign equal opportunity spokesmanship on your stations? Or
I don't recall that. It would have it would have been a general concern of mine. I always took the approach that KOA's position on most issues should be to be neutral and to let the hosts have their own opinions. So I never felt that the radio station should tell the hosts what side of an issue we wanted to be on, whether it was bringing baseball to Denver, whether it was building a convention center, expanding the convention center, building an airport, or any of those sort of things. The magic of good radio, good talk radio, would be that each host would be able to have his or her own opinion, and the radio station didn't have an overall opinion. If we got talking too much about any one topic, whatever that topic might be, that's just not good radio. So I'm sure at times if somebody wanted to talk too much about how great the Chicago Cubs were, or how badly we need to do a new airport or whatever, if somebody was getting too one-sided on a topic, you might give them the advice that's not a good balance. It's kind of like having 3 sections of the newspaper covering one story. That would be a little overboard.
So as a limited partner in the ownership group, did you get involved in any of the talks, or when they came to Denver to look around, were you there?
I was not a part of the official party that met with people from Major League Baseball or any of that, no.
Okay, and then later on, after we secured the team, there was a whole shift at the top of the ownership group. Can you explain what happened there?
Well, I think, if my memory is correct, it was even before we played the first game that Mickey Monas, who was one of the principal general partners, got into some legal trouble in the business that he was in, a retail chain called Farmore, and he ran into some legal difficulties, and out of that he had to sell his percent of the ownership group, and then his number one partner, John Antonucci, also sold a large share of his ownership. And that was picked up by some of the local investors here, principally the Charlie Monfort and Jerry McMorris. They were the ones that I think picked up, and Orrin Benton picked up the ownership group from the guys that got us started. So yeah, by the time the first game was played, we actually had a new lead ownership group, and shortly after that the day-to-day management was sort of solidified, and Jerry McMorris became the chief operating officer of the team, essentially from the beginning of us playing baseball until a few years ago.
So did you have any interesting experiences with the group, or were you just a limited partner?
Yeah, I think, we were a limited partner and we were a business partner. So we had 2 relationships. The business partnership as the broadcast partner, that was a contract that might have been a few years at a time, so we renegotiated that contract many times. And then as a limited partner, you don't have very much input in the day-to-day operation. You're just there to sort of support the entity. So I had no real role in any of the management of the team, and we kept our relationship fairly formal because of the business relationship we had with the broadcast. So the limited partners would meet a couple times a year with the general partnership, and we'd get an overview of how the team was doing from a financial standpoint, how our investment was, what the plans were for the future. But I think I would say it was a fairly broad, big picture view.
So we know that is it 8,500 watt blowtorch of the
50,000.
50,000 watt blowtorch of the Rockies. How much do you think that played into, or was it helpful that the baseball commission was utilizing the time zone without a team and your coverage of the Rocky Mountain time zone?
You know, I do think that was probably somewhat helpful, that the fact that KOA's coverage filled the gap, because pretty much from Kansas City to the West Coast, you didn't have baseball. So I think it was a great story that Denver had to tell to Major League Baseball, is that there's a huge hunk of the country that does not have a regional team. And so the Rockies could fill that void. A team in Denver could fill that void. And KOA Radio could be a part of that, because KOA covered all of that. So that you could reach the small rural farm towns, you could reach into Montana and Wyoming, you could reach into Utah, all the places where there could be fans that didn't have a local or regional team to root for. So yeah, I think that was a very good strategy, and I think KOA played a role in showing that that could be fulfilled.
And I'm sure all those people in the small towns, because they heard it on the radio, they would take a vacation or a weekend trip or whatever to Denver. I'm sure that happened.
Absolutely, and especially in the beginning of Rockies playing baseball, that was the big draw. I mean, I want to remember there were quite a number of season ticket holders from outside of the city of Denver, outside of the state of Colorado. And so people would come from the nearby states to Denver to enjoy some baseball during the summer. And KOA certainly talked a lot about that and addressed that with all the listeners out there.
During all the years that you broadcast and you were there any really interesting things that happened in the broadcast booth or with the players?
Well, I think the most interesting thing that happened in the broadcast booth was a fight between one of our announcers and the mascot, Dinger. So that got a little bit of coverage.
Who won?
I think it was a draw.
So, I know at the time that we were talking about making a bid for one of the two expansion teams, that the state of Colorado as a whole, and especially the Denver metro area, was in a recession/depression. And I know that the estimates on an economic development study showed that there would be maybe $96 million a year impact. So how much faith did KOA have that their $1 million investment would be just a civic contribution versus, say, actual good financial investment?
Well, I think KOA's interest in investing in the team was first and foremost to get a team to Denver, because we knew that if Denver became a Major League Baseball market, that would be good for everybody. It would definitely be an economic driver. It would bring more revenue to the community, but also it would give us something very exciting to talk about. We had experience for decades of working with the Denver Broncos, and we knew how impactful the Denver Broncos were to the community and to our radio station. It gave us a lot to talk about. People want to know what's happening with the Broncos week in and week out. Even in the off season, they want to know. So we knew that if we could add Major League Baseball, that would be the same thing. That there would be a lot of interest in the state and in the region about what the team was doing and all that. We also knew that in addition to the economic impact, that it would make Denver yet again another step up as far as the size of the community and the nation. We would have at that point been one of just a handful of cities that would have had four Major League, or three at that time, three Major League franchises, NBA, the NFL, and then Major League Baseball. And later we got the Avalanche to come here, so we had hockey. So yeah, we were all about that. We knew that we knew that even if we weren't the station that broadcast the games, if we didn't get that contract, we still knew that this was great for the community and great for us, because the community would be thriving and there would be something new and exciting to talk about on a regular basis. So we were very supportive, and the investment was not made with the idea that we were going to make money back on that $1 million. We knew that the $1 million was an investment to meet Major League Baseball's requirement that there be multiple local entities. That's why KOA made the investment, not our parent company. It was made locally by KOA. And we knew that that was just sort of to prime the pump. And we knew that we'd essentially never see that $1 million again, and we didn't invest with the idea that, wow, someday that'll be worth $2 million. We did it simply because we knew that if we could get Major League Baseball to Denver, that, as the old saying goes, it would lift all boats, that we'd all do better.
So you came here in '83,
Yes.
and now it's 2017. What impact has the baseball stadium had on downtown Denver and Lodi?
Well, I think the impact that the Rockies have had on Colorado is easily documented. Physically, you can look at the area around where the stadium was built, and you can see that it doesn't resemble what was there before at all. It's a thriving area. It's just filled with new buildings and residences, and so Major League Baseball coming and building a stadium right in the heart of Denver has made a tremendous impact there. But also, what I found interesting is that in the 80s, Denver had been going through a very difficult time. We'd had the sort of the oil bust, and we'd lost a lot of the oil companies, and the economy of Denver in the 80s was really hurting. And I was thrilled to be around during the 80s and into the early 90s when so many terrific things happened in this community. The business community and the political or governmental community worked together like none I've ever seen any time before or since. We had a new young mayor who was elected right around the time that I came to town. Mayor Pena was elected, and John Elway came to town. So I was ignored. I was not known, because Mayor Pena and John Elway did tremendous things for this community. And so that was the era when we started working on having a big regional airport, a major expansion of the convention center to really bring a lot of business to the community, and baseball was a part of that as well. So there were just so many tremendous things that started happening out of the difficulties of the 80s, that by the time you got to the end of the 80s and into the 90s, we had all these things developing, including Major League Baseball. And so the Rockies really did enhance the cultural part of Colorado. It just has fit all of our lifestyles so well. The fans still support it in ways that are just amazing. And the whole area around where the team is thriving, and the community's thriving. And I think it's because of baseball, I think it's because of the airport, I think it's because of the expansion of the convention center, all of the good things that the business and political community came together to make happen.
That's great.
All right.
I think
Thank you very
that's
much, Lee.
You're welcome.
absolutely great.
That was fantastic.